Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. You can find us on the web at hsstaffing.com. I hope you will consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and speech writing needs. I am delighted to be joined today by Dr. Carla Marie Manly. We will be discussing creating joy in one's life. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap companies to nonprofits, as well as high-net-worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at PK CPAs or call them at 973-882-8810. That website again is pk-cpas.com. They will be happy to be of service. Carla, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. You were a guest on the audio podcast, and I'm delighted you decided to come back and try the new venue.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Please take a moment or two and introduce yourself to our viewers.
I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manly, a clinical psychologist in Santa Rosa, California. I work with individuals, groups, couples. I specialize in issues that help people become unstuck in their lives, moving from old negative habits into positive new habits.
Let me just ask you a general question. Why is joy so important?
I really think in our culture, we tend to confuse the idea of joy with the idea of happiness. And so we're in some constant pursuit of happiness, which is generally something that is received from the outside world, from doing something that makes you happy, getting something that makes you happy. And thus, happiness can really fluctuate. What I like to approach is creating an internal sense of joy, a sense of stability in one's inner self that allows you to take whatever challenges life brings, yet still maintain a sense of joy. And if you have that inner sense of joy, you don't feel as unstable, as buffeted about if life brings you what you want and what you don't want. And so that's why I focus on creating joy. If you can create that inner sense of joy, whatever life brings you, you can make it through.
And is your definition of joy stability?
Not really. What I mean when I use the word stability is I see joy as something akin to an internal flame that is always there. And sometimes and I think we're born generally as joyful little creatures. And as we go through life, I see it as though it's a candle. And the candle gets, it's in its own little votive glass. And the glass gets smokier and smokier and smokier with life events. So we don't see our joy. It's always there. It's always flickering. But life events can make us a little more jaded, negative, depressed. So if we learn strategies to wipe that film off, that smoky film off, we realize that joy is always there. It's always stable. We just need to be able to notice it and see it's there and find a way to get that smoky film off. So I believe that the joy is always there, but we sometimes lose sight of it.
Well, with that, you were kind enough to prepare some slides for us, and I want to share them now with our viewers. What are we looking at here? Tips for creating change. Why do we need to change?
Well, again, in line with my idea that joy is an inherent quality and that we sometimes lose touch with that joy. I think that one of the reasons that happens is we move through life and negative habits sneak in, whether they're habits learned from parents or friends or just as a result of moving through life and navigating life as best you can. And so we sometimes wake up and say, oh, I'm feeling sluggish, I don't exercise well, I don't eat well, I don't take care of myself. And then we make a big resolution to create a fantastic change in life. And generally this happens on January 1st.
Hmm.
And after about the first week, 77% of people are still maintaining that resolution. But when you check in on that same group of people 2 years later, only 19% have been able to maintain that change. And why is that? Why is it that 81% of people would fail, so to speak? Well, it's not that they really fail. It's that they didn't know how to set resolutions in the first place. They didn't have the proper template for change.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, because doesn't it depend on the resolution they make? If their resolution is to exercise and lose weight, which as I understand it is the most popular New Year's resolution, that dies out after a few weeks because it's winter time, it's cold, it's snowing, and the weather's terrible, and you don't want to go out to the gym. It's not a realistic resolution. It is very important for the gyms because that's how they make their money, because people don't show up. But for the individual, it's not so good. So isn't it critical that you know how to, and is this what you mean by a template, that you know how to make a realistic resolution?
Yes. And I say often, to change, you need specificity, right? So the more specific, if I say, oh, I want to lose weight in the new year, that's a very foggy goal. There's not a lot of concrete quality to it. Yet if I say, I want to lose 5 pounds per month, first off, we want it to be a realistic goal. Starting, I'm starting this January 1st, by the end of January, I'd like to have lost 5 pounds and continue that per month until I reach my target goal of whatever that is. So you have a very specific goal, a very doable goal. It's 5 pounds in a month. That is a good goal. It's something that can be achieved and you can create the lifestyle changes. Then you have to get very specific. So many people just stop at a big goal saying, I want to lose weight. Or even if they say, I want to lose 5 pounds per month, they don't set themselves up for success by taking the time. They don't realize they need to slow down and say exactly how they're going to accomplish this. Exactly what changes.
And also, I would think, especially if we're just talking about weight loss, you can lose 5 pounds in the first month. Losing 5 pounds in the second month is a lot more difficult. And eventually you're going to hit that plateau.
Mm-hmm.
Now I want to go back to your slide. You're going to hit that plateau and then you're going to get frustrated. So you have here how many hopes for change fizzle. So now we're at the fizzle stage. So walk us through this.
So when we get to that fizzle stage, which for some people, again, can happen right after that first week, clearly given the stats, it happens to some people during the first week. The idea is that you, first off, have the concrete goals with the concrete steps that you can take and measure. Then you want to make sure your environment supports you. So whether you have a partner that is supportive, or children that are supportive, or friends that are supportive, having support around you. Absent external support like that, and you also want this in conjunction with external support, it's really good to have motivational signals around you, whether it's positive sticky notes on the refrigerator, on the bathroom window, a schedule that keeps you going, so that you have constant reminders that you're in this new phase of life. The other part, you also must change your environment. So if it's one of the reasons that many people who go into, say, alcohol rehab and they come back home, they get back into the old patterns because there are so many cues around us that tell us to follow the old patterns. So it's ideal to, at the same time, to really prepare, change the environment. If weight loss is one of your goals, then you would want to do a thorough cleaning out of the fridge, thorough cleaning out of the cupboards, restocking, check in on positive shopping habits that can help you get away from those foods that are rather compelling or too compelling. And so it's about also changing the environment to support it. And then when you hit that fizzle stage, to have, knowing that it will come, to have something set in place, whether it's a call to a girlfriend, whether it's a motivational jar of little notes you can pull out to remind you to stay the course, that it's only 5 more days, or a calendar that you're ticking off the days, so that you can see that you are really doing what you need to do to get to your goal.
Now, talk to us, and I'll go back to the slide, but I found interesting here is the issue of repetition.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
There is a law in neurobiology. It's called Hebb's law. And basically, you use it in the brain or you lose it. Meaning, in short, that neurobiologically, any pattern that we follow, be it good or not so good, gets hardwired into the brain. The more we do it, the more the hard wire is strengthened, right?
Okay.
And so the reason you lose it is if you're not doing something, then the brain says, oh, we don't need this space, and pruning takes place all behind the scenes. So if we're not doing an activity in a repetitious way, it's not getting hardwired. It's just something that does not become part of the lifestyle. That's why it's important. And I really love the idea of creating change as part of ritual. Because just like we wake up in the morning and we don't have to think about brushing our teeth, or we don't have to think about going to the bathroom, it's part of our ritual. It's what we do. It's something that was ingrained from the time, we were little. So if we can change our habits, such as for somebody who tends to overeat, they may go to the fridge as soon as they sit down right before they watch TV, or they may wake up and go straight to the fridge and have a muffin. They are doing those patterns as part of their ritual. So if they create new patterns, conscious patterns, to create new healthy rituals, then with repetition, that is what will get hardwired. Interestingly enough, there's no set time. You hear that it takes 30 days to change a behavior, 180 days to hardwire it. I wish the research were that clear. For some people, a pattern can be really fixed in the brain as soon as 18 days. For other people, research shows up to 254 days. So it really depends on the person, but the idea is to keep doing it and doing it and doing it until it feels natural.
Now, you compared this to waking up in the morning, going to the bathroom, and brushing your teeth. Mm-hmm. Those are both, to different degrees, natural responses over which you have no control. You have to go to the bathroom, or you have such a terrible taste in your mouth that you have to brush your teeth or at least gargle. Mm-hmm. It's not the same thing at first for dieting. By repetition, by creating a habit, will you create the same type of intensity feeling in your brain that you've got to not go to the refrigerator before you sit down to watch the television? If you get my drift.
I'm following you completely. And where I would take that is those natural patterns of getting up and brushing your teeth, getting up, going to the toilet, some of it is definitely, I need to go right now, or this bad taste. Yet when we look at food and eating, which is also a necessity biologically, right? Sometimes through habit, we have overpowered that natural need, whatever it is, with a habit that needn't be present. So for example, when I wake up in the morning, I could go straight to the fridge, and if I had muffins in it, get a muffin and eat it, because that would be my habit. I'm not really listening to my biology, to my physiology that says, is Carla hungry or is she not hungry? right? And that's the part that if you slow it down to really listen to your body, the same way you're talking about going to the toilet or brushing your teeth, if you slow it down to that simple of a level and say, am I really hungry this morning? Well, no, not really. I don't feel the need to eat. I was going to eat by habit. That's exactly a huge part of the battle, because even when it's segue to exercise, when we wake up, if we really listen to the body wants to stretch. The body wants to move. It does. It's been coiled up in bed all night, right? But we don't listen to it. We reach for the cell phone, we send a text, we get our cup of coffee. But if we really paused and listened to the body, I love the way you set it up because it works perfectly. It is about slowing down and listening to what the body naturally wants.
Now, before we get to patience, which is the final point on that slide, we're talking about the traditional example of dieting.
Mm-hmm.
But let's do something a little different. Let's say that it is not a habit that is in some way health related, which dieting is. Let's say that it's a bad habit, procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
How would you approach dealing with your New Year resolution to stop procrastinating?
Okay, it's a really good topic you're bringing up. I love procrastination. Part of it is knowing, does your procrastination habit work against you or for you? There are some people in my client base, and I've read research on it, but yet I also see it in my practice, where they love procrastinating because handling that that big work project, the 11th hour brings out the best in them. They thrive, they love it. It's how they work best. So if you're in that group and it's not causing you stress and you're actually aware, wait, I'm in that group of people who procrastinate because I work well under pressure, then that's not a problem. However, there's another group where procrastination actually holds them back in life and it causes them undue stress and they don't work well under pressure. So they turn in a poor work product or school product or creative product. So if you're in that group, the one that's negatively affected by procrastination, then what you do is you learn to talk to yourself. And you talk to yourself, and I actually was working with a client just the other day on this. She's procrastinating about getting into her new fitness plan, right? And she's finding every reason under the sun not to go to the classes that she has paid for, mind you. And it's the weather, it's too early in the morning, or the 10-minute drive isn't worth it. So she's procrastinating engaging in an exercise routine that she really wants to develop. So we were working on finding so this actually moves into cognitive behavioral therapy, where you find the cognitions, the thoughts that are leading you to get stuck in the behavior. And that is the first part, Bruce. Once you become aware of the thoughts and aware of whatever this cycle is that you're creating, then you can talk to the thought and actually almost start giggling at it because the brain finds all of these amazing excuses to block you and keep you stuck in the old habits. And then you just become aware of that inner voice that's sabotaging you from whatever it is. And so we talked and said, well, okay, so what was it that kept you from going the other day? Well, it was raining outside. Oh, okay. And so how did the rain? Well, my voice was telling me that it was better to stay in bed. It was too early in the morning. So we start talking about that and working through it. And so that the next time the voice comes up and says, oh, it's more comfy in bed, you don't want to get up at 6 a.m., then you actually talk to the voice as though it's another person. It's just another part of you and say, really, is that what's going to help us get our goal? You know, we really want to get in shape. And so you start talking to the voice instead of ignoring it. And then you just move through it and continue on your goal. Now, it's not always that easy. Again, sometimes it takes a couple turns of that, but you become aware of the voice that is trying to hold you back.
What you're saying is that you try to get the positive or the good behavior to become second nature as
Yes.
the bad had been.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
what you're changing.
Yes, it's the underlying, but you remember with cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one of my specialties, is not the only one I work with, but for behavioral change, it's critical. You have to understand the cognition that's underlying the behavior, and that's how you affect change.
Now, the last point on this slide deals with patience.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's almost as though up until this point, you've been criticizing yourself. You've been a mean taskmaster. You
Mm-hmm.
have to get out of bed. You have to stop putting this off. You have to get to it, because if you don't, you're going to reach your deadline. You're going to be stressed out, and your work is not going to be your best. So now you stop that with patience, and now you are a benevolent dictator.
Well, I look at it as a little different than being a dictator, but really finding out, what do you want? If really you want to be thinner, trimmer, whatever it is, then you become partners with that part of yourself. Not really the mean dictator is that negative voice that's holding you back. That's the dictator. The other one is actually your friendly self, just wanting to get rid of all of the bad habits and take them off and be who you really feel. Because a person who wants to be trimmer, right, or more in shape or eat better, that's their true self trying to get some change made. It's about listening to that true self. Because there are some people, let's say there's a woman who's 5'7" and weighs 150 pounds. If she feels good at that 150 pounds, then that is her, what I call them fighting weights. That's your fighting weight. It's about having the internal self feel as good as the external self. So it's really not about weight or about food choices. You'll make those right food choices when you're really connected to what the inner self wants. And what the inner self generally wants is to feel healthy and well. It's what we're all striving for. It's about getting rid of those negative word tracks.
But let's just say someone, and we all know people like this, they're obese.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way around it. There's just a statement of fact. They're obese, but they're happy. They're not healthy, but they feel fine. So how do you convince somebody who feels fine, who likes the way they look, who doesn't feel that they have any limitations, that they've got a problem, and what they're happy about, they shouldn't be happy about?
Oh, that's a really good question. I wouldn't be unless their health was at risk and they were facing type 2 diabetes, some sort of...
Perfect example.
Right. Now, then there's a medical issue, and I would work to help get them motivated that even if they're comfortable in their body and in their skin, that do they want to be on the planet long term? And do they want to be on the planet in a healthy way long term? Not just longevity, but a healthy lifestyle. So I would try to get that person to partner with me to understand the ramifications of their behavior. Now, if it's somebody who's obese and mildly obese, and they're happy and they're vibrant and their lifestyle is good, whatever weight you are, as long as you feel good at it, that's the idea. You want to feel good in your skin.
So if you have people who are constantly criticizing you,
mm-hmm.
and this could even be a relative,
mm-hmm.
you know, the backhanded compliments that we've all heard and that are glorified on comedy shows.
Mm-hmm.
Breaking off the connection with those people would seem to be a critical step in achieving the joy that you want.
Oh, yes. I actually address this a lot in articles, but also with individuals. That if you, let's call them toxic relatives, right?
Yeah.
And if we talk about and toxic environment, there are degrees 0 to 10, right? 0, no toxicity, 10, terribly toxic, right? And it's about, and sometimes we can tolerate a little bit of toxicity, right? A little bit of litter on the street or whatever it is. Although I'm not a fan of that. I pick up litter everywhere I go. But anyway, so when we look at that with relatives, it's about at what point, if you see, you know, Aunt Betty, nothing against Aunt Betty's, mind you, just a name. But if you see her once a year and you can handle her backhanded comments because it's just Christmas, you know, that's one thing. Maybe you just keep Aunt Betty in your life knowing you see her once a year for 2 hours. However, if it's a relationship that you're looking at your toxicity scale and you're saying, wow, this is a 5 or a 6 or a 7 or a 9, and I don't feel good when I'm around this person. That is where it really needs to be addressed. And then it becomes a boundary issue. It becomes an issue of having a clear enough boundary and clear enough value, self-worth, that you say to the person, wait a second, when you talk to me this way, I end up feeling shamed, sad, scared, worried, criticized. In order to be around you, I would really prefer that you talk to me this way. And then you give the person, and that's a big shift to ask, right? And you might give them a second chance if they don't get it the first time round. And then after that, you might need to really pull back and say, I explained to you that this is what I need. I need you to not call me names. I need you to talk to me. I look at it this way. Kind, respect, right? Kindness, respectfulness, tenderness. And if we don't have that in relationship, it's not really a healthy relationship. So you let the person know what your needs are. And if they're not willing to do that, then you pull back a little bit. And then you pull back a little bit more. And if they still don't get it, maybe you move from in-person situations to just telephone situations. And if they still can't be respectful on the telephone, then maybe you need to step back a little more and say, hey, I love you, but I'm going to revisit this with you in 6 months or a year. And then as a result of standing up for the self-esteem grows. And something about the other person often picks up that you're no longer the doormat.
There you go.
So is that helpful?
This is very helpful. And it's a good segue to our final topic, which is stress. So, how do we reduce stress?
You know, my dad used to tell me all the time, hey, you can't change what life brings you. You can only change your attitude. And I didn't really realize how true that was until I started working as a psychologist and saw that it ties back to that internal flame of joy, that we can't prevent a crisis from happening, but we really can control our response to it, right? And we can get grumpy about it, crabby about it. We can take it out on ourselves or on other people, or we can simply say, I'm going to use my energy to get through this situation, whatever it is, with as much grace and compassion as I can. And that alone then begins to reduce your stress because your self-talk is more positive. And a really good example on a personal level is this. I've had a roof leak at my office and I was headed into work on Monday and the building manager said, oh, you can't use your office this week. We're going to move you elsewhere down the hall, away from all of my beautiful items, my coffee cups, my tea, my files, everything, right? And so instead of getting grumpy and crabby, which I could have chosen that route, but instead I thought, well, this is the challenge life brought me this week. I'll just handle it with as much grace as I can. And so all week I'm running back and forth down the hallway and my clients are kind of giggling with me and the other office has, you know, old furniture in it that doesn't belong to me. And it's my attitude that's making all the difference. I could be acutely stressed about it, but I'm choosing to not let it stress me. And do you see? So it's an attitude. Mm-hmm. So once you adopt that attitude, and easier said than done as you're learning this, right? It's taken me a lot of years to learn this. So for people who are used to living within a lot of stress, their programming is to go straight to anger often, straight to anxiety, straight to sadness, And the idea is, in order to learn that, how to get away from those patterns, I call it creating a de-stress or self-care toolkit. You learn what works well for you. Is it keeping lavender essential oil in your desk? Is it getting up every half hour and going for a walk down the hallway? Is it having relaxing music in, putting your earbuds in and listening to relaxing music? Is it taking a 5-minute meditation break in the middle of a stressful workday? Learning the things, becoming aware, and I love using scales, right? Going again from the 0 to 10, checking in with yourself. When you're at a 0 and you're feeling really good, and then as the day goes on, what's causing you to get stressed? And as you're moving up to a 3 or a 4, okay, I need to take a time out. So a lot of it is self-awareness, Bruce. Really learning to check in with the self, monitor how you're doing, almost as if you have a baby, right? And when you have a baby, you have to constantly monitor it, make sure it's okay and that you're ahead of its needs. It's not, throwing a tantrum on the floor. And that's the idea with ourselves. We forget to treat ourselves with that gentleness and compassion.
Well, I like the analogy to the toolkit. Now, that implies that there are different tools for different situations.
Absolutely.
So let's conclude on that note. Give us some examples, because we all know the expression, or most people know the expression, saying, the adage, whatever it is, you need the right tool for the right situation, for the right job. If you have to screw in a screw, you can't use a hammer.
Right.
So how do you know which tool for which situation?
It's a good question. Some of it is just trial and error. So I have a client who, when she goes to dinner with her family, she gets very stressed because even though she's an adult, her father tells her how to eat, right?
Well, we were discussing previously. She has to break off with that.
Right. And so what she's learned to do, because she gets joy out of the dinners, she just doesn't like being dictated to. So when she feels herself getting up to a 2 or 3, she gets up from the table and says, I'm going to take a break and run to the restroom. And so for her, taking a break and running to the restroom is a perfect timeout. Often timeouts, Bruce, are one of our most effective and often most underutilized tools. So whether we're feeling like the boss has been too hard on us, we forget, hey, I can get up and take a 10-minute walk. So often it is about learning what works for you. I live near the Pacific Ocean, right? So I have some beautiful sea rocks in my office, rocks that were from the shore. And so when a client's coming in, not everybody gets a rock, but sometimes if somebody's really anxious, I'll say, grab a rock. And they'll get a beautiful round rock and they'll hold it in their hands and it absorbs the heat from their stress and anxiety, and they realize how calming it is. And some people then end up, because they found out it worked, they go to the ocean, they get a rock, and they keep the rock at their desk. Again, trial and error. Some people find that getting up, getting a cup of herbal tea. So it's about personalizing it and finding what works right for you, not what works for somebody else, what works for you.
It almost sounds, when you said that taking the rocks, I immediately thought this is California. There's probably a law against taking rocks from the beach, but we won't get into that.
There may be. Maybe I have to take them back.
If the California State Police should be watching, thank you for your service. Don't arrest her. She's a nice lady. It reminded me of a Zen garden.
Yes, very much.
And I was somewhere yesterday, the day before, and the lobby looks like they have a huge Zen garden. There's no fork there, but it's the way the I don't know what the word is, I guess the ruts in the sand.
Right. The etchings. Yes.
These are things that can calm people down because, and this is a question, not a statement,
yes,
because they slow them down If you're doing the Zen garden with the little fork, you've got to be careful. You've got to be gentle. You've got to slow down. Slowing down is a stress reliever, isn't it? That's why you take a deep breath, you'll feel better.
Good point. Slowing down can be a stress reliever.
Okay.
However, the reason meditation and meditative acts like the Zen garden raking can work, or breathing can work, is because if you just slow down and allow your monkey mind to continue going, harassing you, tormenting you with all of these crazy thoughts, you can be as slow as you want, and you're still going to be torturing yourself. So it's a process of slowing down and shifting focus. And that's why mindfulness practices are often helpful with stress reduction, because it's not just the slowness. It's about being in the moment, noticing the orange that you're eating, what it tastes like, what it feels like. If you're doing a breathing exercise, it's focusing on the inhalation, focusing on the exhalation. So whatever you're doing, the slowing down must be accompanied by a calm and reflective state that turns into a place of detachment, so to speak. Interesting, because it's attachment, but detachment from the busy mind.
Carla, I want to thank you. I think we've covered just about everything that could be related to joy. I'm going to put up your contact information, and there's also their mention of your upcoming book, and I wish you well with it. Thank you so much for having come on.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure. Have a beautiful day. Thank you for also, touching base on Joy from Fear. It's due out April 1st. It's an amazing book. So I appreciate you letting me come on and spend time with you.
Well, it's my pleasure. And of course, we appreciate our viewers. Thanks for watching. And as always, keep focused on success.